Hey, this is Anthony in another episode of Thoughts, and it's going to be about necessary evil, which is defined by something unpleasant that must be accepted in order to achieve a better outcome. It implies that the benefits outweigh the negative aspects. The way I look at it is, sometimes there's necessary evils. Even if someone is wrong, then and they don't get justice for it. And two examples I'm going to bring up is the O.J. Simpson case and the bombing of Japan. I know those are like two heavy subjects, especially the bombing of Japan. That one's a lot of it. That one's difficult. That one's very difficult because no matter what, how you slice it, that's all. Those are lives, but necessary evils. I think the reason why they're necessary is because things are not being done to fix the problem, and ultimately what happens is something extreme might come, and you have to let that extreme, that's the opposite of on the pendulum, on the opposite side of the pendulum, that you have to you have to accept it because it was so far to the other side of the pendulum that the only reason why the extreme was even a thing, the extreme has only built up. The only reason why the extreme has only built up is because it was on the other side, far extreme, and it was allowed for as long as it was started. In the case of the O.J. Simpson, where it became black versus white, and if I wasn't born there. I was when that case was happening. I'm like 2-3 years old, so obviously I don't know. I didn't experience that. That media frenzy, that whole situation during that time, other than me being a baby. But it all stems back to how black people were being mistreated, and how it became before then, before the O.J. Simpson case, it was Rodney King case, where the Los Angeles riots happened because of what they did and how they brutally beat this man for no reason other than being black, and how the black community felt they were constantly being mistreated, where they were either killed or beaten nearly to death, or just and the justice system not never, but the justice system, if not 90%, if not 99% of the time, they missed justice for the black community, because the racism was still alive, even when I say we were I wouldn't say out of it, because out of slavery for how many years between that wasn't that much. That the time wasn't that much, but even at that, and obviously, I believe O.J. Simpson killed his ex-wife, Nicole. I believe he allegedly killed the ex-wife, Nicole Brown, and her friend. And do I feel that it was the right verdict? No, because the whole, like, if the glove don't fit, you must quit. Then that doesn't mean the fact that it didn't fit doesn't even matter. Dude could just grab whatever he grabbed, and he got small gloves just to do what he needed to do. And so that whole thing was what you call it. But I don't think the verdict was right in the sense that it was very much they let somebody go because of I guess I don't think they were all black, but there was a black juries that were they were pretty much like, yeah, even if he did, we were gonna side with OJ, and that's that's when you hear that, you're just like, that's not how the justice system should work. But when you go back like 2 years they were. A black man I think he was nearly killed by cops, and they weren't given a fair trial because they were the color of their skin, and the cops. I'm not sure if it's still that bad, but the whole union thing. I think so. That in itself makes it difficult for cops just getting being placed blame. But what I'm saying is like that's where the necessary evil was. Where one trial, not necessarily one trial, because maybe there was more, and maybe at the time justice was served fairly, but mostly trial before the O.J. Simpsons. A lot of black people weren't given a fair trial, and they were in prison. They were prosecuted for things they didn't do, falsely accused. Not saying it was 100%, but it was for how much that was correct, and ones that weren't, that percentage is bigger than it should have been. And obviously the reason why it was because of they were black. So when one case where white people got the taste of their own medicine, I think that was a necessary evil. Even though that meant somebody died wrongfully, and the person was let go freely to live free without the prison time that allegedly he should have got, because I think allegedly he was guilty. But because when you look back at what has happened, and what that narrative started to become white versus black, and how what happened in '92 with Ronnie and the LA riots, that was also on the back of the minds of the people. That I'm not sure that on obviously not the juries. The juries more or less of some of them were more or less of hey, he's black, he's me, and whatever the case may, however it may happen, we're going to side with him. Not all of them, but some of them. That's what the perspective was. I forgot which one. Who there was a lady who she didn't basically said it, but she was like, even if he did, I was gonna. She kind of like said like, she said if it was, but I was gonna still go for OJ, protect OJ, and I think that's. I think it needed to happen, even though somebody died and they were not vindicated by the peers of the jury, and it's if I guess I guess white people finally experience the injustice black people have experienced for so long in their lives, and I didn't think that's it is messed up, but it is things like that is required because the pendulum swung so far out that I needed to find a middle, and even though that middle was from another extreme that was not necessarily right, but had the the extreme was not necessarily right, but because of the situations beforehand, it was necessary. And so I think that's one necessary evil that we have to see for what it is, and even though it's ugly, even though saying that is like you're okay with what happened if that was your Rico, what happened if that was your, and that's understandable. That's truly understandable because I would feel a way no matter what, however whatever social injustice or thing that might have happened outside of my control, and somebody was killed like that, it wouldn't sit right with me no matter what, and so that's understandable. But sometimes somebody has, it just you gotta understand that this injustice toward black people happens so much. They could say the same thing. They could say the same thing about how badly they were mistreated, how badly they had to go through the pains of knowing the justice system wasn't for them but against them, and no matter what, it's gonna be. You look at both ways, and you could say that's unfair on their end, and it shouldn't be like, oh, so two wrongs make it right, which is not. But because if we continue to let that happen, there was a fear that the LA riots would happen again, but during the OJ Simpsons, and then we're gonna have even a further division. So ultimately, they had, it had to swing the way it had to, so that there wasn't this continuous mistreatment toward a group of people that has been dealing with it for 100 years. 100 years. So that's one necessary evil. Now the other difficult one, the bombing of Japan. The bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This is, it's necessary evil to basically kill 200 people, 200,000 people, and say that's a necessary evil is. 200,000 people lost their lives. You're saying that's a necessary evil? It's difficult to say and to hear and to even obviously the same question would be, what if it was us and we lost 200 people or more or less? Would you still think that's a necessary evil? And the necessary evil part of that is the atomic bomb, and we witnessing the powers it could do. Yeah. And now the atomic bomb is nothing compared to what it is then to now. Since I believe it's even far greater. The proximity it covers is far greater than probably what those little boy and fat man. Blast radius was, and I think that's to witness that, to know that we could basically nearly wipe off a whole country by just dropping these two bombs. I think we need is it's difficult because when you say that, you're like, there's people who die who didn't need to die, and maybe the war was going to end no matter what, because it was, I guess, apparently it started to be apparent that there wasn't going to go, things weren't going to go as far as it was going to go. It was going to drag out to maybe later in 45 to 46, but I remember quickly, it wasn't like the war was going to continue to happen. It was understandably it was going to end at some point, but obviously the bombing kind of just put a stop to it real quick. And that's that one. It's just difficult to say that and have any logic reason behind it other than witnessing the power of the atomic bombs and what it's capable of, and saying it's a necessary evil. You could say the war was going to end no matter what, but was it really? Was it? We could say that. But he could get the second win, and maybe the bombing was the recall, or maybe if he didn't bomb, maybe it would end in late 45, 46, or could you a little bit more, or maybe they get the second win and then everything changes. But by all means, it didn't seem like that was the case. that one necessary was just witness that to understand. Hey, if we do this again, this is pretty much you're pretty much doing more than killing 200 people. You're killing probably like a whole country. No, you could not a whole country. You could probably could release a nuclear war that could essentially just decimate the population, and because Russia, China, they have theirs. North has theirs, and obviously we have ours, and having that going off, I think that if it didn't happen in Japan, I think we'd be more willing to launch it today. But because it did happen, people know that once one releases and it lands, retaliation is going to happen, and what happens after could be the end of the earth, the end of humankind. It could be the end of. We could just wipe out the whole civilization, because that's how bad it could get. Because of the toxins, this covers the whole earth, cloud, sky, and then it ruins the plants and stuff like that. And to witness that, to see that, to know what it's capable of, puts a stop in countries of doing that. And that's where necessary evil is at. Even though people lost approximately 200,000 people lost their lives, and that's difficult to say, and which is why it's a necessary evil. And I think there's other points that there are other necessary evils we could talk about. I could bring up. I forgot, but sometimes when it swings one way, in the O.J. Simpsons, it's a necessary evil, since it's been when the black community has been so mistreated and killed and torn apart by racism and the justice system not being for them but against them. You had to have it finally swing in the direction of the black community, so white people could see, all those years we have screwed them over. Now we see we have that ounce of feeling of, and just an ounce of feeling of what they had to deal with for hundreds of years, and with the necessity with the bombing, with the atomic bomb, nuclear bombs, is not necessarily a pendulum swing one way or the other, but seeing the possibilities of a weapon and what it's capable of, and if it's used as a weapon, if it's used freely, it probably would have been if nobody had witnessed the bombing of Nagasaki, Hiroshima. And I think those are things that I'm not sure about this Luigi guy. That could be a necessary evil because of the drugs, FDA drugs, and how they basically went about, how they keeps us sick and stuff. And maybe that was a recall where you put fear into the medicine, recall. But that's what I'm not really sure about. I haven't really followed that one. But those two things, those O.J. Simpson and the bombing, were two things I'm not necessarily familiar with, but you know, everybody is aware of those two things that like it's wrong on both ends. They're so wrong, but they were necessary, and I'll leave it at that. Okay, yeah, well, yeah. If you have any other necessary evils in mind, I think that would be like another discussion I could look at and like maybe. Anyways, I don't know. Thank you.